Anton, thank you for joining us for On the Spot series, our podcast.
Pleasure. Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
No, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I've known you for a while now, but I was just going through like a little bit about you, where you come from, and you know what you told me about your various interests and various activities that you engage in. So you're pretty much the ultimate ADHD person. You know, you do how many things in a day?
And that's been verified by medical tests. Yes, I do have ADHD.
You've got your certificate. It's on your CV.
Certified ADHD. Yes.
As long as that's all that you're certified. What else are you certified in? Photography?
Goodness, yes. So I've started in the film industry in 1992, and we started, that's when it was film, and I was just ever grateful when we went to digital.
Right.
Film is a nightmare. You never know what you're going to get. Digital, you can see what you're going to get.
Oh,
and then,
never even thought about that.
You never knew. You'd have this camera, and you would see through the lens, so you'd see this flickering. But you had no idea if you were exposed correctly. You didn't know if you were overexposed, underexposed.
Oh, wow.
No idea if your focus was on. There was 1,000 things that were just. It was a mystery, and you only know when you had that film developed, if it worked or not. So it was like when you used to go on holiday with the 35mm camera. You had no idea what the shots were like until you got it back from the developers. So it was exactly that. So I was so happy that we've gone digital. Yeah,
right.
Very happy.
When was the digital transformation actually? I can't
Round about 2008 was the, that's when it stabilized, because the first digital cameras came out and they just weren't up to par.
Yeah.
And it got better and better. And then around 2008, now we film with what they call a DSLR, digital single reflex camera.
Okay.
So it's the digital shutter. So anyway, these cameras that we film with, that we take photographs and video with, came out in about 2008, 2009 with Canon launching the 5D, which had this video ability. And that's what we use so much now. And it's now just normal for us to use these.
Okay.
Yeah.
What film were you, what were you specifically, because I know you've done some vehicle advertising videos.
Yes.
Yeah?
So, I mean, basically, I started at the bottom in the film industry, worked my way up. I worked in lighting, grips, art departments. I did everything but makeup and hair. Okay. Even though I cut hair on the side. And, so I learned everything, but I specialized in production and in camera. So that was where I specialized.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And, I mean, now you find yourself doing a lot of photography for real estate. I know that's not all the photography you do, because I've seen you do a lot of plant photography. So how did the whole video then transform into photography?
So in 2010, we were filming a project. It was a conservation project for leopards. And we started filming with these big lumbersome cameras and everything like that. And then it started to come out this Canon 5D, which was so light and creating beautiful images. And we approached Canon and said, look, we're self-sponsoring, self-creating this conservation video. Would you assist us? And they assisted us with the camera and a lens and body. And because you can take photos with what is actually we were using as a film camera, we actually could then, I love photography, so I could then use high-level photography. So in 2010, I started in the photography game, and that was when I could move from videoing into photos as well. So the two are still parallel. I still do video filming and I still do photography.
What conservation project was this?
So we came across a guy who was doing a conservation measure for leopards, and we were like, what's wrong with leopards? You go to the reserve, there they are. There's more leopards outside of protected areas than inside protected areas.
Right.
So when they're outside of protected areas, they get snared for muti or killed for muti, which is traditional medicine. And then they get shot by farmers, and then they get they get obliterated. So most of our numbers are outside of reserves, which is our genetic stock. So it's very important for us, your key threshold, what they call heterozygosity, is to have enough genetic stock that you have a healthy genetic line. They reckon that's 50 individuals. So in a game reserve, say
50, that doesn't seem a lot.
It's not much, but in a game reserve you'll only have 6 or 7. So in other words, you have to have those linkages. They call it corridors, where the animals can move and that genetic material can move along it. They collared a leopard in Pinda, which is in northern KwaZulu-Natal, and they eventually followed the collar 500 kilometers away into Swaziland. So it shows you how far they disperse. Longest recorded dispersal was 800 kilometers in Botswana. So no one would think that this leopard came from 800 kilometers away if it wasn't for the tracking data on the collars. Yeah.
So you're saying what, 6, 7 in a game reserve?
You won't have many. So it depends on the size of the game reserve. Obviously, our biggest game reserve is Kruger National Park, size of a small country. So there you'll have probably 2,000-3,000 leopards as a total.
Okay.
But then in a small game reserve, which would be just a small elite game reserve, that would only maybe have 7 individuals, and that's not many to have good breeding. But you'll find a leopard doesn't see a fence like we see a fence.
Right.
It doesn't see it as it exists at all, and it just sees the other side. So its territory will actually be inside the park and outside the park, but it's when it's outside the park that it's now at risk of being shot and poached.
And the fences hold them. They can't cross over, or they do cross
They cross over them as if they don't exist. They go under them, over them, through them.
Right.
Yeah.
So then what was your project? What were you guys doing?
So what we did is we then worked with people that are doing leopard conservation, scientific approach. We needed to prove that it's science. It's not just a theory. And we then filmed those projects and then filmed the people that were being affected by leopards. So some of the farmers are having stock losses, but then there's ways that you can farm. You have a guardian animal dog, or you change the way that you kraal at night, the way you keep the animals at night. And they'll only take a little calf. They won't take a full...
Okay.
So only when the calves are very small, you just need to have them close to the house or in a pen or something like that. But once they're big enough, you just put them in the field. They're not going to be touched. Yeah. So it's just managing your farming methods. Yeah.
Okay. And then your videography and photography did what for the conservation?
Yeah. So we've now filmed we filmed 3 episodes. The one is set in the Western Soutpansberg Mountains, which is in Limpopo, and that's got the second highest density of leopards in South Africa, outside of the Sabi Sands. And this is out of a protected area. This is non-protected. They're wild. They're just doing as they wish.
Yeah.
And then the other project was in Pinda, which is a private game reserve run by And Beyond, and that's in the northern KwaZulu-Natal next to Mkuzi. And they had the largest leopard project in the world. They collared and tracked a huge amount of leopards and got amazing data. And the last one was in Namibia, in a place called Arindi. And that used to be a hunting concern, so they would just shoot leopards, and that was no problem. And they changed then the dynamic to conservation. So now they're rebuilding the leopard populations and seeing the dynamics, how the males in their territories and the females in their territories and how it works. So it was helping us to understand with that show leopard dynamics, family dynamics. And so we've finished editing. Now we're ready to sell it on to a distributor.
All right. So where would it go out then?
That would be wherever they distribute it. That would be through Europe, through Africa, Asia.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is the message ultimately?
The message is basically a key problem that we have is we don't actually realize as humans how much land we take over for farming. We consume a hell of a lot. And so farming is money. So every time they would kill cattle, that's 24,000 Rand per head. And so that then adds up, and eventually you've got a significant amount of... So I think it's 6,000 Rand a head, and then the one guy had losses of 4 calves, that was 24,000 Rand. So these losses add up, and then you've got your other losses and costs and stuff. So they shoot all predators. And so our free-roaming leopards, which is the majority of their number, were getting obliterated. So it was just telling people... You can have leopards on your farm with livestock. You just need to change your farming methods. And it's to let people realize that we need to pay a bit more attention to conservation. There's species that we think are common, like leopards, and we don't realize that they actually are under quite a bit of threat. Yeah.
Okay, that's fascinating. Because also on that note, I know there's a pangolin conservation project that you've been involved in.
Yes.
And that's closer to here, isn't it? Where
Well, that's a fascinating story in itself. They call it the most poached animal no one knows about.
Yeah.
And you ask a person, what is a pangolin? And they don't know. A lot of people have never heard of this animal. So it's the only scaled animal. So it's the only animal that has scales on its back or on its skin or anywhere like that, mammal. So being a mammal, it has mammary glands, and
I'm trying to think now. I'm trying to prove you wrong, but I can't think
There's
of anything.
Armadillos,
Right.
which in America, but they don't have
Yes.
scales. And then the porcupines don't have scales; they've got quills.
Right.
And so,
Okay.
it's actually quite a unique feedback. But the reason they're so poached is that they call it TCM, traditional Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
As part of traditional Chinese medicine, the scales are part of that.
Right.
And so obviously, as the people who utilize that medicine, the population grows. You've got over 1 billion people in China. You can imagine 1 billion people needing traditional
medicine.
Chinese medicine and
Yes.
what goes into it. So tons of pangolin scales are recovered out of poaching. Now you think a pangolin being this big roughly, so it's roughly a good adult
Size
is
of
14, 15 kilograms.
Okay.
Yeah, size of a medium dog.
Okay.
You can imagine the scales on that, because it's made up of keratin, same as your fingernail, which is very
The
light.
light. Okay.
You can imagine how many hundreds of pangolins go into making a ton. And so the project I worked with was the African Pangolin Working Group,
Okay.
and they would recover animals out of the poaching trade. So they would do sting operations and recover these animals. And
Okay.
they can't feed in captivity because
Not?
they only eat ants and termites. So they're held in captivity, and they try and give them what we call pup, which is porridge.
Okay.
And they
Similar
don't
to
eat
like a
it.
gecko, or how you would feed a lizard.
Yeah, so people give it this stuff and they don't eat it. So they're actually starving to death. And they're kept for 3 weeks, having had no food, kept in bags in their own urine and feces and that sort of thing. So they have kidney and liver collapse and all sorts of things going on. So when they are recovered, they have to first get put on medication, and they drip fed and all that sort of stuff. So it's extremely laborious and expensive to do this. But they have a very good recovery rate. They lose a lot, but they have a good recovery rate. And then the animals then have to be put into what they call soft release. So you keep it in a box in the day, and at night when they come out to feed, they feed in the late afternoon. You put it into an area, and it has to then hunt for its own food, because you can't give it a bowl of ants; it won't eat it.
Really?
Yeah,
It needs to feel its.
It has to
its look to
self-feed.
them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm trying to think now. How do you find even where to put them, or do you, near an anthill, or how do you do it?
So there's various parcels of land that we identified. I became a part of the project, and I helped them to find a stretch of land that had the right conditions, because they'll eat termites and ants, two different species with different makeups, but they look the same to us.
Yeah.
And then you just take them there, and the ant population and termite population recover very well from being harvested. They actually sustainable. So you call it sustainable offtake. The amount of ants and termites you can feed on is actually sustainable for the size of land and the number of animals you put on. And that piece of land's been used for probably 5-6 years now, and still sustaining. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then after that, once they're strong enough, you don't want to keep them in captivity any longer than they need to. They start to get, I've forgotten the term that they use, but their health goes down the longer they're in captivity.
Okay.
And so you want to have them released as soon as you can. Then they go to identified reserves that are safe enough and have the right conditions, and obviously correct for that. And then they get released there. So that was exciting. They had pangolins were what they call locally extinct in Natal for about 60 years, and they're now reintroducing pangolin into KwaZulu-Natal. So
in the reserves, or
in reserves, only in reserves,
And
the reserves have guards and all kinds of security, and they have to meet a criteria.
It's a pity they can't be domesticated, because all these houses that have termite problems would be if we can all have a pet.
Pest control. They come in and they just get rid of your...
that
just would be
come
ideal.
Release 10 pangolins for a day or two, and move to the next one.
That would be ideal. That would be if they could. But they have what they call a pup, which is the little baby, and the baby rides on the parent, and they'll have maybe one in a breeding cycle. So the breeding cycle is very slow, and it's a nightmare. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a difficult animal.
That's why they're endangered as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Okay. And they're not territorial. So when you're releasing them,
they are. I'm actually unaware of an animal that isn't territorial. They are territorial. So you'll have
You must think about that as
Yes.
well. Okay.
So sustainable numbers, etc., etc. Yeah.
Okay. And is this all activities you've done all your life, or is this something you've picked up since you've been involved? Because I know you're involved a lot in Kyalami area.
Yes. So I have conservation-minded grandparents who made us aware of the need to conserve and preserve, which is great.
You're originally from Zimbabwe?
Yes. I was born in what was then called Rhodesia, and I left when it was Zimbabwe. Our parents came down here.
Okay.
And so I've been aware of conservation my whole life, and then once I had skills that could contribute better to conservation, which is storytelling and filmmaking and documenting, then I could give that more to conservation practices.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think of that octopus
beautiful story
documentary?
My octopus teacher. I think it's a thing that I would love more people to have, is a one-on-one moment with nature in quietude, where you can actually observe the beauty and depth that there is in nature. So that's what I try and do with my conservation work, is to try and personalize these animals, explain them to people, why I find them always amazing and exciting, but it's to try and convey that. And I think that's what my octopus teacher got us to understand, was this animal, an octopus that you think has no brain and personality or anything like that, and to see how it's emotionally connected with this person was so beautiful. It was a beautiful story.
And he also then did the chimp one afterwards, didn't he?
I haven't seen
the same.
Yeah.
It's also, I think it's the same filmmaker.
Yeah.
And again, tremendous investment of time.
Yes.
And tremendous eye-opener for me on what the chimps are capable of and how similar to humans they are.
They're exceedingly bright.
Scary.
Yeah, exceedingly, yeah.
But also with the you kind of used to feeling the animals only have good qualities, in the sense, they only do certain stuff for survival. You know, a lion will only kill because he wants to eat. But with the chimps, you see a different side, a lot closer to human, where, it can be for politics, for likes and dislikes, for fun, so. It's
actually quite, as you say, everybody paints animals in this beatific nature, just love and peace and light, and you watch dolphins drown things and attack, and we forget dolphins are predators. So chimpanzees are predators, and you watch chimpanzees hunt and eat other monkeys, and it's like watching cannibalism. It's very awkward for us to watch, but we have to say, like with the leopard conservation, for the leopard to live, something has to die, and that's an awkward discussion.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating, actually. But I mean, in general, with the Kyalami neighborhood, and this is something that always comes to mind when people move house, and especially if they move to a new area and then have no idea what to do, who to meet, what happens in the area. So you've been super busy. So tell me all the activities that you do in Kyalami, because I know that you are one of the admins on the Facebook group that's very active.
Yes, yeah.
And I know you guys promote local businesses a lot. Just tell me what you guys do as a community.
Yeah, so basically I've been there for 30 years, and a conservancy was started about 14, 15 years ago, when they realized that the land was being illegally used for interests that wouldn't serve the community. So Kyalami is the largest equine concentration in southern Africa. Some say the largest equine concentration in Africa, but that number just needs to be ratified. So the largest concentration of equine being horses. Used to be the home of the Leopards. They're now in the Cape, but it's the...
Did they move?
Yes, they've gone down to the Cape, yeah.
Oh.
It's a very expensive breed to manage and that sort of thing. So it was reliant on donors, and they had a very good deal, and so they moved down to the Cape. So that's better for them. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, the equine interest needs open spaces, and it can't obviously have too much noise. They're a very skittish animal, the horses.
Yeah.
And so incorrect land use would change this industry. And we did a survey in, I think, 2008. I must confirm the date. And we worked out at that time that the revenue generated by the horse industry in that area was over R1 billion a year. So now we're talking about probably 2 billion rand a year that it's probably generating, not what it's worth in terms of static valued horse prices, etc. The amount of revenue it generates is over 2 billion rand. And you think if this is a completely sustainable practice, this could continue as it is till the end of time. Because of the way that the land use is done and raised, and it's low impact on the environment, etc. You could have this generating this capital and revenue.
But I mean, how? I'm trying to think other than breeding and shows.
Yeah, so it's one of the most expensive practices that one can have, the best conversion of cash to manure that you can ever invest in. so to feed the horse, just basic costs to stable a horse, in other words, to have it at a yard, is going to cost you at a basic entry level of 10,000 Rand a month. And that's to go to the grooms, which are unskilled, semi-skilled, or skilled. Okay. So in other words, your employment tier goes from completely unskilled all the way up to specialist. So it's got a wide range of employability. And then your animals need to have a farrier, which comes and puts the shoes on the horses. Okay. You've got to have the vets, specialized vets. You've got to then have the feed, the saddles, the insurance, the transport, the horse boxes. The horse boxes are ridiculously expensive. Don't think it's just wheels and a bit of sides. It's like over 100 grand for a nice horse box, just average horse box. Okay. And then your vehicles to transport it have to be bigger. So the amount of revenue generated by this is immense. Okay. Yeah.
And you're saying that Kyalami is
the largest concentration.
Yeah. Interesting.
Basically,
I just imagine KZN, the Durban, July, and
No. So if you think about it, Johannesburg has urbanized. So Bryanston used to be one of the big riding areas 50 years ago. Used to be big stands, and people would outride all the way to Kyalami and back. And those horse large stands have been divided up, and now there's smaller stands and even developing further. So you can't have equine anywhere else. Lone Hill is now, so Sandton has densified so much, there's no horse place anymore. Right. And so they've come down to this last area, which is between Pretoria, Johannesburg, and all the other urbanized areas around it. And then you go into the far country in Magaliesburg and that. Okay. So it's the last area that you're close enough to the city for the resources, but you've got the open stands to sustain the horse interest. Right. And Sun Valley, would that fall under that whole Kyalami? Yes. So do you call this conservancy basically the entire Kyalami area, or are we talking about that green Kyalami area between? Yes, so it's the green area. It's between I don't want to call it. So that's the other one. So Winnie Mandela Drive, between that and then the R55 up to then Summit Road and down to the Yixke River. Right. So that's the area that the conservancy is. So it's called Greater Kyalami Conservancy. Yeah. But it has become increasingly urbanized. Those big stands are now being subdivided, and this is something that any buyer should look into. So there's something called an urban development boundary, a UDB, and inside the urban development boundary you can densify up to a certain ratio. You can do, depending upon where you are in the city, you can do 3-story walk-ups and so many houses per hectare and that sort of a thing. You can develop to a certain extent because you have the resources. You've got sewage, you've got sewage electricity, all that sort of stuff. Okay. All of that is supplied, and you've got enough electricity. Now you've got an area outside of the urban development boundary, and you cannot develop beyond a hectare. You cannot have more than a certain height building. You can't have more than, I think it used to be 8% coverage, now it's 30% coverage on the land. So if you've got a hectare, you can only do 30% coverage, and that includes paved areas. So find out, if you're buying, are we inside or outside of the urban development boundary? Because a lot of people see these large plots as being cheap, and I'll pull up 16 units and I'll do
Yes.
25 or whatever it is. They think they'll buy and then develop.
Yes.
You can't.
Okay.
It's not possible. It's not legal. There aren't the services, and so the town council won't allow that development. So if you're going to,
Okay.
but they call it speculation. So if you're going to be a speculative buyer, I'm going to buy in the view of this area is going to appreciate in this
Yes.
time. I'm going to develop in 5 years, 10 years,
Yeah.
whatever. Just make sure where that urban development boundary is, and look where the roads are going to be. There's always proposed roads. So there's the
That's a big one, because those proposed roads have been around, proposed for a very long time.
Since the 70s. So since
Yeah.
1971, the PWV9 and PWV5 freeways have been, they actually cross in the middle of Kyalami.
Are these proposed roads or
Proposed roads.
Okay,
Since the 70s.
right.
So you've got to say, where are these servitudes? Where would it affect my land? So in other words, say you're buying in speculation that it's
Yeah.
going to change in so many years,
Yeah,
but you're on the road servitude. Check your title deeds, what it is.
yeah.
You'd you'd be losing huge money if these roads came through. So look at that, and then go to the JRA, Johannesburg Roads Agency, and look at where the proposed, what they call K roads, are going to go. These are the larger roads.
Yeah.
Like we've got a proposed K56 that somebody wanted to put through the area, which would divide it up. Imagine being next to you're in a lovely quiet neighborhood, everything's
Yes.
green and big,
Yes.
and then suddenly 2 years later, they've got this huge road which cuts off half your land.
And that comes with all the construction.
All of that.
You know,
all of that. So you really
yeah.
need to be very astute as a buyer. What are the proposed roads? Am I inside or outside the urban development boundary? What is the densification? What are the services? Is this sewage or septic tank? Because we're on septic tanks. We don't have sewage.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that K56, I mean, that's also been a big number of years.
That's been proposed for many years, and that was it had the most amount of objections in any proposed construction yet. We drove that.
Right.
so
Yeah.
we drove that. We felt it would destroy the equine interests. Having a large double-lane highway, which is over 50 meters,
Yes.
coming through and splitting your things. People do what they call outrides. You get on your horse on the weekend and you just ride
Yes.
up and down the streets.
Yeah.
Those outrides wouldn't be possible because you wouldn't be able to cross this main road. It would be noisy for the yards next door. So it would change the horses do something called colicking, which is where the stomach turns. And it's some of the most expensive surgery. You've got to put down 50 grand just to start the discussion.
Oh, wow.
And and often the horse dies. So it's you don't want to risk colicking and that sort of thing.
So does this mean that the road is still just in proposed stage, or is it now approved? Because my understanding was it is approved, and in fact the people whose land it's going through have been paid out already.
So there's a lot of there's few facts on the ground. So it got an initial approval, but there was a fatal flaw in the water use license. You need, any time a road or building or anything crosses a water course, changes a water course, puts a bridge across a water course, any time water is impeded or in any way affected, you need a water use license.
Okay.
We're in a water scarce country, so we're very aware of the impact you can have on water. So this road would cross a number of water courses, and we then appealed the decision and said, this doesn't take into account the water use, the correct on-the-ground water use. And so that's been on appeal. We've just had the hearing 2 months ago, and so that's going to be then, I think, later next month, the papers get put forward on that. So some people have had their land bought off them. Part of them have had part of that certitude paid off.
Yes.
Other people haven't.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah. So that's been the interesting thing. There's been a lot of things have happened with that have not been above board, and some that are. So it's a contentious road, that's for sure. Yeah, facts on the ground are very thin. Yeah,
because also interestingly is I have come across sellers who, or rather I should say, the purchaser needs to be very aware that there is that potential, and that potentially what they're buying has already sold the servitude. You know, that seller has already sold the servitude, and that I think not every buyer was made aware of.
Yeah.
You know, I've heard and I've come across people who thought that by speculating and buying the land and holding it, in future to come, the government will pay, the municipality will pay them double and triple, but no, because that's already been paid.
That's right.
Years ago. So that is definitely buyers beware in terms of Kyalami area, in terms of the proposed roads. I don't know if that is as pertinent in other areas that we work in.
Every area has that, and you can go to Johannesburg Roads Agency and you can go into the offices, and there's a huge wall with all the proposed roads drawn on it. I would highly recommend having a look at it. It's disturbing. Your land might be on or near one of these proposed roads. Another thing which is very important for people to be aware of, talking on the water issue, is the area is known for the amount of wetlands on it. Now, a wetland you might not even see with the eye. It's not a river. It's basically any time you've got a depression in the ground and water then passes through it either above or below the surface, it's termed a wetland. Now, you may not construct within 32 meters of the edge of the wetland. So say I bought a piece of property and it's 150 meters wide, 120, about 150, which is 2.5 hectares roughly. 170 meters, I think it is, something like that, 170. Now you've got a wetland.
Which is a massive piece of land.
It's significant, but for that area it's kind of a standard size.
Yes.
Say I've got a wetland on the bottom corner and it's a 25 meter wide wetland. You've got to add 32 meters to the edge of that. So you've got to take 57 meters away that you may not construct in that area. So I've seen this in a couple of estates where people buy these beautiful plots and they're large and you think, I'm going to have this rambling huge home.
Yes.
It's going to be the pride and joy.
Yes.
They start construction, the green scorpions arrive and they say, wait a minute, this is a wetland. You can't construct here. And you've now already paid your developer, you've already paid your plans, you've already put down significant sums of money, and you've done earthworks.
Right.
All of that is now illegal. You're going to get a fine, a huge fine, and you can't build, and you're going to have to restore. That it's really shocking. So don't take for granted that the wetland has been delineated. What they mean by delineated is you have to have a wetland expert go. They test the soils and they test the plants, etc., that they find in there to determine where the edge of that wetland is. Okay. And by our eye, we would think, it ends over there. Meanwhile, it's 5 meters over there. So by our eye, we are lay people determining the edge of a wetland. So if you're in an estate and you are anywhere near the base of a slope or a dip or anything like that, find out where that wetland is. Because if you construct and you have now constructed in a wetland, you're fined and you have to remedy and you have to change your building plans and I've seen this in so many estates. We go there and we're documenting and the homeowner will say, please don't photograph the rising damp and please don't photograph this damp, and you go outside and you suddenly realize, they're in a wetland area. And so a friend of mine, he bought his house, it was in an estate, and suddenly he kept on having rising damp. They had to drill down and put in a submersible pump to pump the water out from his lounge.
Wow.
Because it was constantly coming up.
I've seen this done in basements, but lounge.
Yes. And it's a thing that so we're a water scarce country. We've got 6 months with no rain. 6 months of no rain at all. Basically what a wetland does is it holds our water. It's a sponge. And it slowly releases that water out the sponge. That's how our rivers can keep running during the winter months. Okay. Because these wetlands are slowly releasing this water. And every time we take out one of these wetlands, we hollow them out and we make them rocks so that they drain faster. We're taking away our savings for the winter months. Okay. So slowly, ecologists and the city are realizing we can't keep taking an acre, because what happens is anyway, I'll get to that. So we have to protect it as a civic-minded person, one. Yes. But if you're not going to protect it because you really don't care and you want to build your big house, You're going to have your walls cracking.
Your house will be the sponge.
Your house is going to be showing everyone where the wetland is. You're going to see the cracks in the corners of the walls. You're going to see your mildew under the carpets. You're going to see the rising damp where your plaster is going to be lifting.
Yeah.
There was one guy who was super confident, I can do what I want, built his pool in the wetland, and it just pops out. It literally pops out because your surrounding soil has so much volume of water in it. It actually lifts the pool out. So your pool cracks and then all the water runs out. So you can be as strong-minded as you want, but nature wins every day.
Yeah.
So for yourself as a buyer, investor, developer, homeowner, just make sure you're away from any kind of water flow on a slope or anything like that. So specifically on slopes, water goes downhill.
Yes.
And if you're building your house on a slope, that water is going to push against that wall and it's going to go somewhere. So have an engineer do a proper assessment and rather fix before than repair after.
So, but I mean, you mentioned the green scorpions. So in terms of, let's say I'm a complete layman and I saw this beautiful 2-hectare piece of land in Kyalami and no one says anything to me. Is there anywhere throughout the conveyancing process where the deeds office has that information, or where is that information available? Because if no one knows about it, and it doesn't look wet, because it mostly doesn't.
It's dry as a rock.
It never looks wet. Yeah. So how would that person know if no one prompts them they should know?
That is a very sad thing, and we've been in consultation with a very high-end estate that we've actually shot some houses at, to try and get them to have those wetlands delineated, because the initial developer never delineated the wetlands and sold, in my opinion, in very bad faith, large plots where you can only develop a third and it's in the wrong half of the property. It's an area that you don't want to put a house because it's not nice. You're not going to get
wrong exposure.
You're going to be south facing. You're going to be, facing. It's just the worst. You're going to be right up against the estate wall. Who wants that? So, sure, there's nothing in your title deeds which will indicate where the wetland is. There's nothing in the deeds office that's going to indicate where it is. There is something called a C plan, which is a conservation plan, which you do as a citizen have access to, and that will show the main wetlands, but it's not going to show what we call drainage lines, which is where, as I said, on a slope, water is going to drain. They call it seep. So seep. And in winter, as we discussed,
it's dry.
A wetland gets harder than the surrounding ground. It's like cement. It is hard as a rock. But in summer, remember as a children we used to worry about quicksand, that you'd drown in quicksand.
Right, yes.
The reason it's like
Funny,
this is basically we were so worried about quicksand as kids.
Never seen it, but I was anxious.
Yeah, it becomes like jelly, and so if you have the slightest vibration, everything sinks down, and so your house will want to subside into this jelly, and you're going to be cracking everything. So literally. Goodness me, do your best to try and...
So there is no law. So let's say a developer purchases a lot of land and creates an estate. There is no law to say that you can only sell stands that are fully mapped out, wetland, and so on.
Sadly
none.
not. What is coming out, and you would be the best person to discuss that, is post a sale. So every seller has to disclose to the buyer issues, problems, faults, and anything that is problematic with the property. Otherwise,
that they're aware of.
That's now that they're aware of.
Yeah.
So the developer, if they haven't done, which they're required to do, an EIA, environmental impact assessment, which they're required to do, if they haven't done it, then they're not aware.
Yeah.
And so this was a problem. This developer that we were talking about, they used an EIA of a portion of land and said it was for this portion of land, which was incorrect.
I see.
So that's misleading, and so that then is illegal. And so we feel that these landowners should be suing the developer because it was not done in good faith, and 2, it was done illegally. Documents were fraudulently used to say an EIA was done, which it wasn't done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I am seeing here is a bit of a gap maybe with there has to be some maybe governmental oversight where the stands are identified,
yes.
and before it is allowed to be sold as an individual stand, there has to be a sign off from someone who has someone that is independent of the developer, who has seen then all the.
There's so much that people are ignorant of. If you are going to clear a hectare of indigenous land, you need to have an assessment done, and you need to get permission to do it. If you are going to, and there's 5 points to remember about a wetland. You may not bisect it, which means cut across it. You may not trench it, which is what a lot of people do to drain it faster.
Okay.
You may not impede its flow. So in other words, you can't build a wall across it. You may not change its flow. So it's may not impede it, may not transect it, may not channel it. You obviously can't pollute it, and there was another one. So we found people put up walls, and the beauty is this guy. We told him about the wetland. We disclosed it, how big it was, where it was, and everything. And he said, yes, no problem, I'm going to comply. And I showed him 720,000 rand building a wall across the wetland. Oh, no, well, that I'm never going to do. A year later, he built a wall across the wetland. The next season, we had the largest floods we've ever. We've got climate change. It's a real thing.
Of course,
you can ignore it and deny it, but it happens anyway.
Yeah.
At the biggest floods we've ever had in Joburg, his wall was thrown over on its back. So now you've lost probably 200,000 rand on a wall, and that's what I'm saying is be aware, because you're going to be throwing money away. It's going to happen. It's just when. And so. You're going to get a fine. A woman made a beautiful dam, little paddle pond and everything like that, 270,000 rand.
For the fine?
For the fine, yeah.
Okay.
So yes, everyone is not aware of these things. We know that a lot of people are ignorant about it. If you are buying a natural piece of land and there are no buildings on it and you're going to be building, a minimum would be to get a specialist of some sort, a wetland specialist or a grassland specialist or whatever it is, to at least have a look. It's 5 grand or something to get them out. It's not much. If you think about you're going to be spending a few million on some kind of development, that little sum in the front is going to save you hundreds of thousands of rands.
Because that is actually the assumption, especially when it comes to estates. I know maybe less so when it comes to farmland or agricultural land, which is Kyalami. But when it comes to estates, the buyer's assumption is that the developer had to do all these things, otherwise they would not have been allowed to sell the stand.
That is the assumption.
And on that note, even when it comes to invisible rock,
yes.
I've heard of people buy a stand to build a house and the entire thing is a rock underneath.
Yes.
And they've had to come up with the most convoluted
it's expensive.
ways of building houses into rock.
Yeah.
They can't have proper gardens. They have to come up with rock gardens. It's incredible. And only to realize that the developer wasn't expected to disclose that there's rock or to even check. Yeah.
They're not required to check and that is a challenge, because when you go and you buy into a new development, so new development means they've got a show house and everything looks lovely and it's perfect and the lawn is always green and there's no problems because it's brand new, it's not cracking yet. And you think, goodness, I'm going to put my house here. So number one, I want to just get people to know this. When you walk onto that beautiful estate and it's wild and natural and you've got open spaces and everything, just remember you're going to have 60 to 70 houses around you building right up to the perimeter wall.
Yeah.
And so you're going to have your neighbor here. So you've got to say, visualize this development in 10 years' time with all the houses on it.
Yeah.
And your beautiful view of the dam has a double story in front of it.
Yeah.
And your beautiful view of the sunset has a triple story in front of it.
Yeah.
So,
and usually the back of the, the toilets with the...
and it's you're looking onto the worst part of the house. So try and visualize, if you're buying land undeveloped, what it's going to look like going forward. And just stand on that land and look at the way the ground is sloping. Look at the way there's little, where if water was running down as if it's concrete, is it going to run to? In Kyalami, we've got very shallow granite. And so, like you're saying, some people don't know where is the rock. And because the rock is so shallow, the water doesn't permeate a lot. And so we get a lot of what you call hill seep. You know, you'll be driving through a suburb and you just see water coming over the pavement after the rains.
Fran? Oh, okay. Sorry, we'll cut this. Okay.
You're driving along and you see water pooling on the curb and that sort of stuff. And it's running down. That's called hill seep. Now imagine if you had your house against that hill seep. You can't see it in winter. You can only see it in summer. So try and visualize building on a slope where that water would be running, and imagine it running, because a lot of people are doing basements and that sort of thing, how it would impact your property.
I don't get the basement thing at all. I know it gives you extra square meterage. It's very American, but it is also, I see a lot of houses. I never see well-used basements. I see them there, and I see signs of people not doing anything with those basements. And I see a lot of pumps and trenching and you know, all the nonsense that goes with the basement. But for the cost that it takes, you know, one would imagine there's a much better use for the money when building. But interestingly, I know Feng Shui doesn't like buying a house on a downslope. The house must be perched on the hill. And the same with the Vastu principles. I know they don't like to be going down into the entrance. And it makes perfect sense then with the whole water situation. You know, if there's a flood, then yes, your house will be filled, even if you do have some form of a system outside. Attenuation,
etc. I must say, the principles of Feng Shui, etc., they actually are common sense, which is great. Don't sit with your back to a door. It's not great because people are going to startle you all the time. Don't have your desk in front of a breeze that's blowing across you. You know, these things are actually very, very practical. So if you go to a lot of the Feng Shui principles and you look at it and see how it works, you know, granted, you know, mirrors and crystals in corners and that sort of stuff, you know, you find you can turn those away. But the basics are just practicality. And it's lessons learned about what makes a harmonious home. Do I want a harmonious home? And I look at some of these driveways that are at 15-degree angles, and I think, in wet weather, how are you actually safely going in and out of these driveways? And, just look at... buy a home. A lot of people are buying an investment instead of a home. You've got to live in that thing for a few years. Make it worthwhile. Life is to be enjoyed. You know, do it and love it. So just getting back to our neighborhood groups. So basically we had the Gecko Conservancy, and we work with people to help understand best practice on their land, so you don't get fines and all that sort of stuff. Conservation is our ideal, but on the back end is just, you know, not getting fined and
so the Gecko Conservancy is not just that green piece of land, it's actually all the activities that go with it.
It's the greater area. From that, we set up this website, this Facebook site called Kyalami Neighborhood, which we were going to use just to tell people about development applications and things that they can object to or be a participatory in, etc. And eventually it became so useful to people that it grew and grew and grew. And now we're at, I think, 9,700 people. And we've kept it area specific. So it's just for our area. And people can, on a Monday, they can mark it under a thing. On Tuesday, we've got equine things. You can do marketing on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, if you're looking for jobs or if you do a service, you can do that. Thursday is Compassion Thursday if there's charities or things like that. And then Fridays for weekends. So we gave people an opportunity to have a time and a day when they can do stuff that's of their interest, and people have found it very useful because we're very strict. So you have to be well managed, and so
you don't allow banter or bitching.
No, you can banter, but you know, there's obviously the rules: be nice, be courteous. You know, just
I know there were a lot of issues with Prison Break with the naming.
Yes, we thought it was a bit of a rudeness to the people. So opposite the Leopard Correctional Facility. Some people call it Leopard Prison, but they now call it a correctional facility. they set up this development and they called it Prison Break. So now you've got these guards who are trying to keep the prisoners in, and you've got this place called Prison Break outside it. So we thought it was just a little bit rude. So anyway, just
a little bit funny as well.
Bit, it's funny. And they call their entertainment thing San Quentin, so, with the success of the Facebook site, we realized when WhatsApp groups grew that we'd need to do some community groups. And so we set up the One Gecko group, and then I'm the chairman for that sector's community policing forum. Okay. And we then set up groups within that. So we've got what we call an emergency-only group, which, as the name says, it's for emergencies only.
Right.
No chit-chat, no discussions, no comments.
Yeah.
That's it. And then we set up a general chat group so people can have a chat. They can do their leaning across the fence and chatting to their neighbor. And we've got a notices group. So your things there's going to be water, all your service deliveries, electricity outage, water outage, lost pets, that sort of stuff. The stuff that's
a job, eh?
No chit-chat, yeah. And then because we've got large open felt areas, we've got a fire response group. And we just had yesterday, we had a thatch house sadly burned down. So then we could get resources there. We can get the fire bowers and all the departments and everything like that. So
is that all on Facebook or
this is
to
all
WhatsApp?
That's all on WhatsApp.
Okay.
And the emergency only group this morning, a young girl fell off a horse. She had concussion and some light injuries, and so we get ambulances there. So we've built up relationships with Netcare 911, ER24, Emergimed, and a couple of the other medical service providers. Then we've got the head of our police station and his main heads of departments on there. We've got TRSS, ADT, Aragon, Axon. We've got the main security companies on that group as well. So, they're not on the emergency only group, they're on our patroller group.
Right.
So as soon as there's an incident on our residence group, we then put it onto our patroller group, which has got all those members on it. Okay. So within 10 minutes, medical assistance was with this girl.
Oh, wow.
If we have a house break-in, within 5 minutes, you can have emergency response when there's a fire. So it's just so good to ask, if you're moving into an area, do you have a community group? Do you have this portal that you can reach these emergency numbers? And then in our group description, we've got Eskom, the water department, we've got the SAPS, the fire department, we've got all of these numbers in the group description for your local thing. SPCA for Midrand is in that. So all your contacts are there, so you can get that response.
And I mean, that's a lot. What areas do you cover? Because, it's Kyalami, but then there's Glenfinnis, then there's Caswald. How far do you guys go? Baloo, what is included in all your emergency responses and all your activities? So
the funny thing is there's an overlap of our Gecko Conservancy with our Sector 4 community policing. So that area actually perfectly overlaps. Okay. So the one feeds the other, which is great. So we go from the Lone Hill at the Ixke River, going up north. You've got Glenfinnis, you've got Cleve, AH. Then you've got Saddlebrook Estate. You've got Sun Valley, which is Bridal Park as well, and Blue Hills AH. Coming back down into Bolu, and then the two developments that are off Bolu as well, and then Kyalami AH and Kyalami AH Extension 1. So it's
Crowthorne not.
Crowthorne not. That's the other side of the R55, and that's another sector. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But Kyalami Estate.
Kyalami Estate's also across the
other
R55.
side. So you don't. So you take everything on this side of the. All right, and then. So is everyone welcome to reach out? Do you look for volunteers, or do you, what are the rules? Because also people like to be volunteers, but maybe you don't want everyone for all your activities, or is it certain activities you look for volunteers and others you don't?
Yes, so with the Conservancy, we welcome anybody to participate. If you can contribute in some way, if you've got a skill or anything like that, we welcome that.
Like what? What do you look for?
Sure. So I run the Biodiversity page, so I've had to know everything I can about biodiversity, which is insects and plants and birds and animals and the whole thing.
But all indigenous, I'm assuming.
Yes, yeah. I mean, the exotic stuff is easy because it's, you know what it is anyway. So
yeah.
If we've got on that group, we've got insect specialists, we've got bird specialists, and they help to identify, because somebody will be like, oh, what's this insect? What's this plant? What's this thing? And then we identify it for them, and it helps to make stuff you can understand it. And we set up a gardening group. So now we've got a gardening group as well, and people will be like, oh, what grows well here and in the frost, and I've got this insect and it's eating my plants, and what can I do? And so we've tried to set up a community of helpers. And then with the Community Policing Forum, it's a constituted body underneath the South African Police Services for the country. And that's the community, Joe Citizen, who then works in a partnership with South African Police Services as an oversight on the service they give. So if people come to me and they say, I opened this case, I've had no feedback, I then go to the police and I say, look, this case number of that and that open on this date, they've had no response. What's the response? And then the police will say, we've got an operation coming up, I need to know the dodgy areas. And then we'll ask the people, okay, what's the problem? And people say, oh, there's this empty house, or there's that shebeen, or something like that, and we pass that information across. So we're basically like a bridge between the community and the police, and the police and the community, like an information portal and a communication portal. Yeah.
Okay. And has this been around for long?
I actually don't know when it was first introduced. I've been a part of it for 11 years. It was running for 11 years before that. So, I mean, this has probably been around for 50 years, I would imagine. Yeah.
Okay. And is all this information for anyone that wants to move into that Kyalami area, is all this information on your Facebook group? Or how would one learn about it?
Sure. Anybody can go onto on the Facebook page, Kyalami Neighborhood Facebook page. If you live in the area, you can be a part of it. And you can just ask these questions, and I'm one of the admins, and I'll gladly help out. So, Yeah.
No, it's really fascinating, because often, even if you're moving 5 kilometers sideways, you still find yourself in a completely new environment.
100%.
Often, different way of doing things. I've been living in Midstream now for 8-9 years. And literally, at least once a month, I'm discovering a new WhatsApp group, for the moms, for the runners, the whatever, So there's just so much that one can do, but sometimes you feel so overwhelmed, or sometimes you just don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. I agree.
You move in somewhere. I mean, I discovered a few things about the Midstream area that I was completely unaware. 8 years of living there and being an agent, So I think it's definitely a great idea when someone buys into a place to ask around and, just try and meet the neighbors, the good old way of doing things, and ask them what WhatsApp group should I sign up for.
We've now got a thing with our agents in our area. If a person moves into the area, I get their contact details and I add them to the groups. And the nice thing now is with these groups, you can see which groups are linked now. So you can join, say, our community group, and then you can see, there's a notices group and there's a fire group. And then they request to join, and then they can actually see these. And we've got a birding and wildlife group, and, there's all these different things. And you can then see what's here and what's not. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Yeah. Actually, that's very clever. So they just submit to you when someone buys into an area, and then you guys do. Yeah, and then
we add them to the group, and we say so and so has moved in on the street or this thing, and everyone welcomes them to the neighborhood and welcome to the area, and then they'll be like, fiber's down, and then you give them a link to the fiber group, and then there's all these things. So we try and make it welcoming and helpful. And
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm not holding you to it, but is that K56 happening or not?
That's going to be the interesting
or over
thing.
Your dead body, or
I'll go down fighting, I can tell you that. But it'll be intriguing and interesting to see, because there was a lot that wasn't made aware of to the Department of Water Affairs. And so the tribunal that we had recently, there was a lot that came to the fore that was clearly not disclosed. And so, yeah, I think before the end of this year, there should be the final hearing on that. So that's going to be an interesting one.
So if it
we'll be
is
intrigued. Yeah.
okay, and if the outcome is no, is it a no forever, or is it just another fight now, just from the other side?
We feel that they should have used Zinnia Road, which then crosses now onto Winnie Mandela Road. It's a road that's used all the time. It's thick traffic. If they'd used that, it's got servitude on the sides. You can easily use that. We proposed that in the beginning, and it's called the Mackenzie Alternative. One of the residents proposed it, and that doesn't cross wetlands. It's already got land servitude. You don't have to.
You just need to expand the road.
You just expand it,
yeah.
and so
which is already
the land
a busy
is there.
road. Yeah.
And so you'd then have your 2-lane road, and it would go exactly where it needs to go. The current design of the road goes right through dams and wetlands and things like that, which are
makes no sense.
It's exceedingly expensive. They're meant to have these overpasses, and it's a huge amount of money if they had taken that route, whereas the other one would be a fraction of the price. So, yeah, we're it's becoming apparent, we hope, that the road was designed in an exceptionally poor way, and ideally they can align with a better road use. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, there's hope then for a lot of people wanting to buy then and just being fearful, because there are a few stands with know this road cutting across, and they're battling to sell for that reason.
I would at this stage, I wouldn't guarantee at this stage. I would be cautious. I would not take that risk currently. That's all I can advise, and I'm on the side that's fighting for it never to happen.
Yeah.
So any of these proposed roads, I would caution. I would caution strongly. Yeah.
Okay. And are there any new shopping centres coming up? Because there's been quite a few.
There. Nothing proposed. I know shopping centres are battling at the moment. So like Fourways Mall just posted the biggest losses.
I saw that.
Losses, yeah. And there's been big losses at shopping centres because of the fact that we're getting, since COVID, delivery bikes. We're having now, we don't have to go like we used to the stores as much as we did.
Yeah.
And so that model is breaking down. That model is changing. So, and again, I go back to the fact that we're outside of the urban development boundary where I live and where I have these interests, which means they can't develop these things. They actually changed the urban development boundary for the Kyalami Corner Shopping Centre. So,
oh, really?
Yeah, they actually moved the boundary for that.
Okay.
And so that I can't see happening again.
Any more than that? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's actually, again, that's good to hear, because it means that you will still have that greenery and the riding spaces and all that.
If that's the lifestyle you want, it's at least more guaranteed there than anywhere else.
Then, yeah. So a lot of the estates are creating a bit of a horse riding setup, but it cannot compare size.
It's so expensive. I mean, stabling at one of those is up to 40,000 Rand. I've heard that was the number I was given.
Really?
So you can imagine 40,000, you've got 2 horses, that's 80,000 Rand a month, on top of your vet bills, on top of your other costs and your 170 grand saddle, etc. So, that's big money. So if you can rather have your horse stabled at a 10 grand yard, kind of.
And what wildlife is there? Because you talk about birds, what interesting stuff can one see? And snakes, I'm sure. And I'm sure you guys have snake catchers.
Sadly they're going out of the numbers are dropping of snakes. So reptiles globally are becoming very threatened. So every time we have fires, the reptiles get burnt and killed.
And people have maybe a slightly unreasonable...
A huge fear. It's a superstition. So there's superstition and fear. There's two different things, but they result in deaths of snakes. So we get what we call a brown house snake, which has got a little cream stripe above the eye, completely non-venomous, lovely thing. It eats amphibians and rats and stuff, so
it's a good thing.
Fine. And then you've got red-lipped herald, which has got a little bit of venom. You don't want to get bitten by it, but it then eats also, your things that you might not want in and around the house. And then the only other snake we get in any numbers is something called a rinkels, which makes a hood like a cobra, but it's not a cobra. and that is still,
that one you don't want to be.
You don't want to play with that. we catch and release them a lot, but it's one of the least problematic venomous snakes that you'd have, because it'll warn you, and eventually it'll strike. So pets get bitten by them more. I haven't heard of a single person in our area ever being struck by them.
Okay.
And
that's good to know, because people do.
Look, it's a concerning snake when I catch it. I pay a lot of attention. I don't take my eye off the ball with that one. And then from a mammal point of view, we get something called a spotted genet, which looks like a little baby leopard, but it's got a very long banded tail like a lemur.
Okay.
And that climbs trees and adapts quite well to urbanization. We still get hedgehogs, African hedgehog, which is a protected species. In some of the bigger areas, we get porcupines. And we get rock hyrax, which is dusty, and then you get mongoose. You get a yellow mongoose, slender mongoose, water mongoose, otters. So there's still some decent mammals around. And then
I know across the road, Stein City has what are these crocodile-looking things?
Yes, it's called a water monitor. So that's in a common term is leguavon.
Leguavon, that's it. That's what I was looking for.
And that's a gorgeous reptile. So that's awesome. It'll give you a bit of a whack with its tail if you get too close, and it'll bite you quite significantly, but no poison, no venom. And it lays its eggs in a termite mound. It's a gorgeous, nice, lovely thing to have around. But people get afraid because they think it's a baby croc or they don't understand what they're seeing, because it's huge.
I've seen a few. I was shooting a short video at one of the houses, but it was an unoccupied house, and this boy started walking across the swimming pool, checked us out, walked around the entire swimming pool, and then disappeared in the bushes. So it was it was actually, to me, it's really fascinating, and it's what we pay a lot of money to go and see in Kruger Park. And now it's right here. Why not?
It looks prehistoric. They're fantastic.
And
then we get obviously some amphibians. We get something called a giant bullfrog, which is, it'll be this big.
I'm glad I've never seen that.
They're gorgeous. They're fantastic.
Okay.
They'll bite like hell. So if you're going to move
bite frogs.
Are
you serious?
Bullfrog. Oh man, it'll.
But no teeth, right?
No, it's got two little pointed things in the front, which aren't technically teeth. It's bone cartilage. But I wouldn't. It'll hurt like hell. It'll
Clearly,
really
you've been bitten.
No.
What were you doing to the frog?
I know. So I know how to capture these things. I don't have to learn the hard way. I've never been bitten by a snake, but I'm going to catch it the right way. So and then birds. We study something called the African grass owl, which very few birds.
Also my favorites. Yeah.
It's gorgeous. We get this spotted eagle owl, which has got the ear tufts.
Yes.
We get marsh owl, which is just smaller than the grass owl. We get a white-faced scops owl, we still get that. There's
and barn owl.
Barn owl as well. Yes, thank you. Yeah, we get barn owl. Yeah, so there's quite a few about owl species.
Owls are probably the most divine birds.
They're fantastic.
Yeah,
they're incredible.
Do you work with that owl?
Our rescue center.
Rescue center.
So we had
parties, isn't it?
Yeah, we had some chicks that were escaped a fire, grass owls. And they helped us to just look after them. And he said, look, I think there's an unburned patch. They live in wetlands. Let's see if the parents return. We put these little chicks back there. The parents returned and fed them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, fed them until they needed to fledge. Yeah, so it was great. Those were a good success. Yeah.
I'm sure you never thought that would be the case.
No one thought. No one thought it would work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was trying very desperately in our previous house to attract owls, and my hubby put an owl box up and zero interest.
You get two types of owl boxes. You get a spotted eagle owl box, which has got a ledge in the front, and then a barn owl, which has got a
had the barn owl one.
Yeah, has the little door which it goes and hides behind. And we had ours up for 4 years, and before spotted eagle owls moved into our box. And so you never know, are there a breeding pair around? Am I in the territory of another owl? Does it already have a box?
Yeah,
remember, they're territorial, so they're not going to have too many in an area.
Okay.
So put up the box. you're probably going to get Indian miners and Egyptian geese and sometimes bees.
As long as I
take them
don't get
over.
rats, because I have a
You won't get
not
rats in there, but you'll
interested.
get bees before rats. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then your photography of houses, because
Yeah.
you've now done. Did we start together? Did you start with us, or had you
close
started?
very close to the beginning. We almost
it?
started together. In fact, maybe we did start together.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah.
Okay, so how many? What's it been now
I
that you're
must
doing
count.
houses? How many houses have you shot? Do you know?
I must count because I've got them in all the different folders. But I must actually break it down and count because I keep all the houses that we've shot. I keep the images in stock. So
Oh, you do.
yeah.
It will be fascinating. Have you ever gone and checked your first one versus now?
Man.
And
Wow. So I am a professional photographer. I did well enough with the photography that Canon have us as there's an ambassador and then what they call we are
champion.
no it's like evangelist. That's what they call it.
Okay.
So you don't get free gear and stuff that what did I say the first one is?
Ambassador.
Ambassador
Yeah.
gets like camera gear and that sort of stuff, and they are
Right.
the focus and stuff. So the evangelists is we'll go and do talks and give presentations, and when there's a new camera launch, they'll give us the new camera before it hits the stores, and we'll do a review on what it's like and how it's shot and all
Okay.
that sort of stuff. So we were obviously good enough to get onto that
Yeah.
tier. So my brother and I are Canon evangelists. But with any new style of photography and real estate is a style,
Yes.
there's certain things. So I read up quite a bit and I learned, okay, they need this and this and this. But then when the first 3 houses I shot, these were very low-level, entry-level houses.
Okay.
Goodness, I looked back at them the other day and I thought, ooh, wow, goodness me. I didn't have a tripod and I had high ISOs, which made them noisy, and there were some things.
Yeah.
And yeah, so where I am now and where I was there are 2 different things, yeah.
It was many houses
A lot of houses.
later.
But yeah, we learned a lot of lessons, what
Yeah.
works and what doesn't work, and yeah.
Yeah. And you've seen some interesting
We've
cases,
seen some things.
and sometimes you think the most amazing photos, and then the owner would say, "Yeah, no,
Yeah.
don't like this."
Yeah.
And then you realize we all look at houses with different eyes.
And that's the thing is, as a photographer, I don't shoot for myself. I shoot for my client.
Yeah.
So my client must tell me, we want less of this, more of that those colors are to this or to that. So we've worked together where we now
Yeah.
create a look that you like as
Yeah.
as an agent. And so we've got a look
Yeah.
established and we stick with
Yeah.
that. And if the client wants something different, we'll do whatever the client wants. Yeah.
But it's interesting because I now, every time I see something, especially real estate or trying to book a hotel even or a guest house somewhere. The other day I was looking for on Airbnb, and now I'm so professionally, changed that I'm looking and thinking, but what are you showing me here? I'm not looking at the room. I can't see the room. I'm looking at a vase. You've done a close up on whatever, but I don't know how big the space is, and so on and so forth. So you do now start to look at the space and say, what are you trying to sell here?
What are you not showing me?
What are you not showing me
Yeah.
as well? I didn't
That's
even
my
think
number,
about it.
That's my number one, because I know if they've shown this angle and that angle, but not that angle, I'm like, oh, what's in that angle? Or if they're what we call a tight shot, so it's very narrow focus, like you say, it's just little bits and pieces.
Yes.
And they're not showing me the whole space.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, so because we with our film thing, we travel a lot. And so then if I'm going to a town, I look at where it's positioned on the map. Am I close to a main road? Am I close
Yes.
to what? And why are they not showing me the bigger area?
Yeah.
And so then I'm very, very cautious about that. And
Yeah.
so, you're very
Yeah.
aware of what you don't show. That's my first thing.
Yeah.
Not what they're showing me. I
Yeah.
don't care what you're showing me. I want
Yeah.
to know what you're not showing me.
And that's the thing. And a lot of times people do it unknowingly because they think, oh, I made this beautiful cup coffee cup arrangement. So let me show you that I'll offer you coffee cups with coffee. But I want to see how big the room is, and is the bathroom with a bath and a shower or not, you know. Or I don't want just a photo of a tap, you know. And you often get that.
Yes.
So in terms of, I mean, yes, I know everyone has different ideas, but in general, what you've seen that has done the best on your photos, what would you say? Because everyone has a cell phone these days, and they think, okay, I'm a photographer. I actually don't need anyone with an eye. I can just point and click.
We have this discussion about flash, no flash. So flash is flash on the camera, so you can go in high handheld and you do one photograph, and then you go. So you can go through the house quicker and faster. For me, it doesn't show color, so it whites out the room. The colors are all knocked out, so I get no warmth, I get no feel. It's a whiter image.
If you use the flash.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of flash photography as a professional. I don't like it. My brother likes it. Obviously, when we're doing portraits, etc., you have to flash. That's a thing. So the way that I shoot a house is that I'll shoot 3 exposures. I'll do the highlights, midtones, and then the lowlights, and then I combine those 3 in Photoshop, and that brings out that information in that dark area. You can see in there that highlight that would be burnt out with other photos. You can see there, so you can see the whole tonal range of the house. And the colors are all there. And so it would be, for you, if you walked in, what our eye would see. Our eyes are the best compensators for light.
Yes.
We can look into this bright light and I can see in that shadow at the same time.
Right.
Whereas the camera will be either that highlight or that shadow. So we don't realize our eyes look for that tonal, tonal depth. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's my taste, and you seem to like it, so that's okay.
Yeah,
you're my client.
No, to me it works very well, and I also, for me, the biggest thing is right back when the wide-angle cameras came out, and somehow they used to make the space look so much bigger.
Yes.
And often you would walk into a place and you wonder, what did you see on the photos? Because you see none of it in real life. So. And yes, you're right about also your eye. When you step into a space, your eye will see the entire room. But if you have the wrong approach with your camera, you're not going to see the entire room. You're going to see the corner of the room or just the wall.
Yes.
So it's like such a fine art between, it needs to be, for me as an agent, I don't want the person to come into the house only to discover it looks nothing like what they liked on the photos. When they walk into the house, they need to say either 100% your photos portrayed it great, or it looks better even, you know. But it can't, the deceiving factor, you know. I absolutely don't want the person to come to the house and then say, okay, this is nothing like it and I'm not going to buy it anyway, and now they lose trust in you as an agent. Because they feel, okay, you've tried to get them into the space by misrepresenting, making it much bigger. Yes, it must catch. And these days, the wide-angle camera doesn't, I think, misrepresent. It just catches the whole room. Whereas in the past, used to make the room look massive. You know, the first maybe 10 years ago, when they came out in real estate photography. So I like reality, but the right colors and all that, but just in general with people, you know, thinking I can take my phone and I can take, you know, just by you explaining how you do the, you know, high exposure and all those things together for a house that is 10 million, 20 million rand, or even if it's not an expensive house but it's on a big property, how do you capture it with your phone? You can't.
And I mean, that's the other thing is I'm what I like to term a professional photographer. So I have a sort of level that my work has to be. I can't do below that. So I spend a lot of time in Photoshop. When you shoot on wide angle, the walls will be like this or like this. And so I take it then into Photoshop and I make sure that the lines are straight. You know, obviously we shoot as straight as we can, but there will always be some change to that. So the lines are straight, and I make sure that the highlights are dimmed, and everything is fixed up to look professional. Whereas when you get in with a cell phone, you can see the walls aren't straight, and the colors aren't great, and there's either a highlight or a shadow, and it just doesn't do it justice in my point of view.
Yeah.
And yes, as you say, walk into a house and I try and make sure that I've got this angle, which shows there. Then when I shoot there, you can go to there. So you could, as a person, follow the photograph around the room and you would see all the stuff. And it was one of the estate agents pointed that out to me, as they said, how does that staircase fit into this whole thing? Granted, there's times when I can't show every single space there is.
Sure.
You're going to arrive there and there's going to be a wall of cupboards that you didn't even know, because it's not going to photograph well. So I also have to look at what will photograph well. Some things just aren't going to translate onto... And Marisa got quite stroppy with me the one time. So I didn't show this one staircase from this angle. And she said, where is this thing? And I said, well, it wouldn't have looked nice. Well, let me have that choice. So now I shoot, even if I think it's not going to work, but it's an integral structural part of the building, I'm going to shoot it, just in case Marisa wants it. So
or my car lift in the garage.
So there's things that I think just look tatty and stuff. So we actually had that agreement, the car lift in the garage. I said, look, there's just too much junk. It's going to look awful. Yeah. And so Marisa went back to the home and explained this. It was cleaned up. We went back and we shot just that thing. So, it's just
that's a feature. Hey?
It's a fantastic feature. But the problem is, if I was to look at this room now, I'm not going to look at the desks and the shelf and everything. I'm going to look at the wires.
Yeah.
So our eye naturally goes to mess rather than decluttering. So it was a thing that I had to learn. I'm in the visual media trade. So I had to say, okay, fine. Can a person imagine and extrapolate this or not? People can't imagine. So you have to show them stuff. So I have to show them, look, there's a stove. Look, there's a thing, and this is that, and that's that, because they can't imagine it. So with a lot of the things, I have to say, how are they going to interpret it? And if I show them this thing and they don't understand that ties in with that, it's going to look nasty. So I try to not show certain things that people won't be able to understand and interpret.
Yeah, because the photo can't explain what's happening.
You don't have my narration explaining.
Yes. Yeah. And then every now and then you get the house that doesn't look amazing on photos no matter what, but it is actually an amazing space.
That has been I mean, it's wild. I often get asked by Joelle, how's this going to interpret? And I said, okay, this one's going to photograph beautifully. Yes. And it does. Yeah. And then there's some that are lovely homes, homes that I would really love to have. And it just doesn't translate. And it's a funny thing. We have it with people. Some people are photogenic, some aren't. Yeah. So you meet the person, you think, good God, this is the most attractive person I've ever met in my life. And you take a photograph and you think,
not working out.
Turn again and photograph, and it doesn't translate. Personality doesn't come across in a photograph, and often that's what comes across as energy and personality.
True.
And some people, the converse, to the eye look a little bit like, oh, goodness me, let's not meet. Yeah. And you take a photograph and bam, they're rocking. And so it's...
Well, also Instagram and TikTok filters have helped tremendously.
Have they really?
I actually know people that I actually know someone that is in that space, and you will not recognize them necessarily in real life.
I have that whenever I'm going through things, and I think, goodness me, that's quite an attractive person. As photographers, we like pretty. Yeah. And you go through and you're going like, I don't think so. And somebody will tag them in a shot that they haven't put the filter on, and you go, that's the actual.
But I mean, with houses, gosh, it's like you have to think so hard, know, and even for our owners there that want to take their own photos, and I always say, guys, take your own photos, but I want to do something as well. And yes, you don't always know what people will like in a house. Yeah. I'm big on kitchens, so if you ask me, I'll have 20 photos of the kitchen, but then you have someone that couldn't care less, but they want that car lift, know, or whatever else is their thing. Yeah. So hence having more photos is better, but like time of day, afternoons.
Oh, critical. Yeah. I mean, time, there's that thing in our industry, golden hour, which works for almost anything, and that's when the sun's setting or rising, and the particles in the atmosphere are being lit, and so you've got this volume. It's just lovely. Some houses it doesn't work on. because they actually don't have enough glass to let that light in.
Oh.
So we actually shoot those houses midday. So when I get reference pics and somebody says, is it going to work as an afternoon shot or not? And you go, no. We need as much light thrashing into that house as possible. So 10 o'clock where the sun's actually punching through the window, getting in, and I can still use my ambient light. Some houses do not.
So you're saying the more classic, let's say your Tuscan style with the smaller windows, you don't want that golden hour shoot.
Except for if we're doing an external. So in other words, what we would do is we would start the shoot inside and end outside.
Okay.
Because at the end, I'm going to have my beautiful sky. You know, there's sky replacement now, but everyone uses the same clouds, and it just looks
they all
the
look
same.
Purple, and they all look.
I'm sorry, but it's like, and doing proper sky replacement will take me 10 minutes on a photograph to get the amount of levels tweaked so that it is believable. We have something called uncanny valley, and that's where with robots it either looks freakish or it looks believable.
Okay.
And with us looking at these sunset shots, you've got a cold, overcast day with this golden light over here. So you have to actually change the lighting on this photograph to match this. People don't do it. They just click sky replacement and then they throw it in and the edges haven't blended. And you just, Lord no, don't. Just don't.
Because there are apps where you can play around, and I've done it, and then you see your blurry edges where you replaced something or whatever, and it's like, okay, it's not going to work.
and that's where Mauritius employed my services.
The water service.
Yeah, my pool services. It's so refreshing in the time of year when people have got clean pools, and I don't have to change a green pool to a perfectly blue, clear one.
Yes, or when they have empty pools and you have to fill them.
The empty pool and you have to fill them. Thank heavens for AI and generative fill.
Yeah, but that's to me that works beautiful. It takes less time to explain to people. That the pool will be filled once you take them there, but before they come to see it, so they hear the story.
They can't visualize it, and that's why I go back to think, what can people imagine? They can't imagine a full pool. They can't. So you fill the pool for them, and they'll arrive and say it's empty, and you'll say, but this is what it'll look like when it's full.
Yeah, correct.
So that's why, is it cheating? No, it's not cheating, because they can fill the pool. But
it's like staging a home. The furniture won't be there afterwards.
Yes, 100%. You're going to move into an empty house.
Yeah.
But you can't visualize it. Just know you don't have that skill. So, we help people to sometimes understand the visualization. Yeah.
So now, based on what, with all your various activities, would you buy land and build, or would you buy an old house and take your chances with fixing stuff that doesn't work, based on, if it's an old house, then the cracks would have shown, or if it's land, you build your dream house. What would you do?
Land, dream house.
Dream house.
Land and dream house. I'm that guy who goes into a store and I never find what I'm looking for, so I settle for stuff. So with my bedroom, I couldn't find the bed frame that I wanted, so I made it. So I like that backboard, I like these legs, I like that space, I like this thing, but I don't like that, and that, and I don't like that color. So I made it. And then my cupboard in my room, I couldn't find the size with the look and the finish and the bits that I wanted, so I made it. My side table, I made it. My when I do my tactical gear, I make my gear. I make everything. I make my knives. I make everything because I can never find what I want. So my dream home.
I think you've got too much time on your hands. That's what I'm hearing. You're not busy enough.
There's 24 hours in a day. I've got another 20 seconds left that I can shoehorn in. No, exactly. But that is the thing. So I know as a creative, I'm never going to find what I want to need. So if I have the chance, I will to spec. Yeah, this is budget dependent.
Yeah,
this is budget dependent. And again, I don't want an old house because it's old concepts. We've moved forward. The way we utilize space in the past is done. Granted, a beautiful 3 big brick course house that's going to stand, all the earthquakes in town. Beautiful, fantastic. But the look and feel is not contemporary enough. We've moved really far in a short space of time. Yeah. The changes between the 60s and 70s, you had some radical. Okay, let's not even use that as an example. But there were some radical design changes in the 70s. But our use of light, our use of materials, and that I think is actually what changed. We have new materials these days that allow for different construction methods.
True.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, South Africa property look is incredible. I think the variety, the architecture, I think it's absolutely magnificent. It's
We're moving in such a great direction.
But it's also light years ahead of, when I go and travel, of course, Europe has its own charm.
Yes.
With the older stuff. But it's old stuff. I don't want to live there. I like to go see it, but don't make me live there.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Cape Town, I love it to bits. I could visit it all
but
day
don't want to live in that Cape
there.
Dutch. Yeah.
No, it's done. It's finished. I don't know people either. So.
True. Okay, so new. Except you don't own.
No, I don't.
Don't want to own.
I would like to own.
You would like to?
Yeah.
I thought it was like a principle.
No. So there's a beautiful thing is getting rid of attachment doesn't mean not having things. It means things not owning you.
Okay.
So in other words, I'm not tied to a need for a car of any kind of look. I'm not tied to the need for a certain job, a certain look or anything. I'm not bound by people's impressions and no one needs to ever know that I have these things. It doesn't define me. Yeah. I define me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not defined by
your
my
Canon camera. Okay. Yeah. Anything else you want to share with our people? Any advice?
Sure. Yeah, I think we go back to that thing. Buyer beware. Do as much homework as you can. I had a friend who bought into our
I've got another fear now with your wetland story. One more anxiety.
Especially wetlands because it's going to destroy a house and you could get massive fines. So before you do anything, do as much Google research as you can and get as much consultation. So a guy moved into an area, I think he spent 50,000 Rand doing due diligence, finding out where the rates have been, where they're going, what the land use allowances are. And he did so much research and he is now so happy. And so if I'm going to buy anything, if I'm going to buy a car, I'm going to try 15 to 20 cars before I buy it because I never want to have buyer's remorse. So never have buyer's remorse. Spend that little bit of money now rather than use it on the back end. It's an investment. Yeah. It's an investment that will repay you 1,000 times over.
And ultimately, it's your responsibility to do your research.
You're on your own, hey. You're on your own. We've got fantastic Consumer Protection Act laws. They're fantastic. They're great. But as we found out, there's certain things that are not within it and disclosed.
Yeah.
So do as much homework as you can. Spend that money up front rather than on the back end.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
That was, actually, I learned so much. We'll be doing this again. Thanks.
Absolute pleasure.
Okay.
Thank you.